All right, we are live on YouTube, and UGTV should be starting about 3 minutes.
Hi, Rocky. It's Melissa.
Hi, Commissioner.
Hi. I don't think we have all of our committee members on yet, do we?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. It looks like we still need Commissioner Philbrook and Tom Groneman with the BPU.
Correct, and I don't see either one on yet.
Okay, then we're going to give a minute or two to give them a chance, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Live on UGTV.
And we'll get started here in just a couple of minutes, waiting on a few committee members to join us. I'm going to give 1 minute for Mr. Groneman, and then we'll get started.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, Rocky, if you would keep your eye open for Tom Groneman. I think we have everyone else, and I think we'll go ahead and get started with our Public Works and Safety Standing Committee meeting.
Will do.
Thank you so much. So good evening. This is October 26th, Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. This is Commissioner Melissa Bynum. And before I call the meeting to order, I just want to announce that due to COVID-19, some committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely via Zoom, as well as some on site. All participants joining by phone, please mute your phones when you're not speaking to avoid background noise. And during the meeting, when you speak, make sure you announce yourself by name and title so that the public knows who is speaking. This is critical. Given the number of remote participants, it's also current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, in-person public comments have been suspended unless otherwise required by law. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments are included in the recording this evening. I will now call to order the meeting of Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. Would the clerk please call the roll?
This is Tiffany in the clerk's office. Roll call: Groneman, Philbrook,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Markley,
Here.
Bynum.
Here. We did have a blue sheet distributed. It added 3 items to our agenda tonight. Item 6, the UG's commitment for a local match for the countywide mobility plan and TOD strategy. Item 7, an update on Mark's PSP grant for the Northeast Area Heritage Trail and the UG's local match. And item 8 is an update on Mark's PSP grant for the Miriam Lane corridor and the UG's local match. Next, we have approval of our minutes from August 24. Is there a motion for approval?
Commissioner Mike Kane, move for approval.
Ramirez, second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call on our minutes, please.
Roll call: Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Has
No.
Groneman joined?
I do not see him yet. Do you see him, Rocky?
Commissioner, I do not see him on here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our minutes are approved. In our committee agenda, item 1 is 2018-19 priority traffic signal project. It's a survey of land for the priority traffic signal project, and I believe we have Mr. James Bain from legal with us to explain. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner, he's on.
Okay, Mr. Bain.
Good evening, Commissioners. I don't know if is Jeff Fisher on or someone from Public Works?
Jeff Fisher's in the attendees. Rocky, could you please promote him? Thank you.
Okay, I see Jeff Fisher is with us now. Mr. Bain
I also have Troy
Jeff.
Shaw on.
and Troy Shaw.
This is Troy Shaw, County Lawyer. I can give a quick description of this if you'd like.
Yes, please.
This is for the traffic signal replacement project at 10th and Minnesota. It's the survey of land to allow us to acquire easements and right away for the project.
Excellent. Does this, Troy, by chance have anything to do with some work we're trying to do with Kansas State School for the Blind to help with the crossings and whatnot?
Yes, that work will be with this project as well. There's a little bit with the crossings and a little bit of sidewalk work that's related to that as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any questions on this item? And Madam Clerk, did we have any comments from the public on this item?
No comments.
So this is a voting item. If there's no further discussion needed, I will entertain a motion.
Commissioner
Ramirez.
Markley, move to approve.
Commissioner Markley made the motion. Commissioner Ramirez, would you like to second?
Yes, I second.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, roll call, please.
Roll call. Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye, and that, I'm sorry,
Board Member Groneman joined us.
I do not see him yet. I apologize.
No worries. Thank
We'll
you.
try to keep our eyes open here so that we can alert you in case we see him join on. Thank you.
All right, just don't want to miss him in case he joins.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, I believe that motion passes, and it brings us to item 2 on our agenda, which is a complete streets citywide policy. And I know that we have Gunnar Hand and Troy Shaw here to bring us the information on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Troy and I are going to do a joint presentation. We sent it out last Friday to the standing committee to review. There hasn't been, there's been some copy edits made to it, but it's all in all the same content. Has he been moved over? Because we're going to kind of pass the mic a little bit.
Yes, Troy is on.
Okay, great. So I'll just go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Gunnar Hand. I'm the Director of Planning and Urban Design. The Complete Streets or proposed Complete Streets ordinance is a collaboration between many members of the community, my department, as well as public health and specifically public works, which is why Mr. Shaw is going to help me present today. Can everybody see my screen? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So we wanted to start off, and this will be quick. I know we're trying to move fast through the standing committee, so we'll go as fast as we can. So Complete Streets essentially is just a design approach for public right-of-ways that prioritizes people.
This is Troy Shaw. So when people hear complete streets, a lot of time they focus on bike lanes, but basically it encompasses a lot of aspects of transportation planning, whether that's vehicular or pedestrian. Here are a few examples of different items that would be considered complete streets. As you may be aware, we have quite a few of these already in the county. And this is kind of some real life examples of what some of those aspects look like. Some of them are semi-permanent, some of them are permanent, and you can see with some of the green and grass, there are stormwater benefits as well as green infrastructure opportunities with complete streets as well.
And this is Gunnar Handigan. I think that this has been an ongoing process since the original resolution was adopted in 2011 by the Board of Commissioners. It's been an ongoing conversation with the community, specifically housed within the infrastructure action to meet team, but also a little broader than that. But it encompasses over 100 surveys that we sought out from the public. I think we're going to see several folks from the community speak up on this agenda item. And I believe in your packets was also included upwards of 13 letters of support accordingly. But for me and for what we were specifically looking at, you will recall over the summer, we had 3 emergency ordinances that we moved forward. All of them essentially encouraged businesses and residents to do more outside, specifically within the public right-of-way. So we felt the timing was correct to come back and make those public rights-of-way all the more safer with this ordinance. And I think specifically there is a direct correlation between both public health and public safety. Over the last 50 years, the United States has essentially made roads, designed and built roads to make it easier and faster to move cars. And that's had consequences, both in traffic fatalities, but also into an increase in our sedentary lifestyle, which has created all kinds of health pandemics that we're dealing with right now, from hypertension to diabetes and obesity.
So the gist of the ordinance is basically says moving forward, the unified government will plan, design, construct, operate, and maintain the public realm for all users, which from an engineering standpoint really just codifies what we're already doing and what the unified government committed to in 2011, or at least took the stance of that's what we wanted to do in 2011. So it really just goes to what we're already doing, and that's really reflected in the strategic plan the commission put out with the goals. This ordinance directly touches on 4 of the 7 goals, and I could argue that it indirectly at least touches the other 2 of the other 3. So it really fits with what the commission's goals are.
And in terms of economic benefits, we know that if we can create viable alternatives to the automobile, we can significantly reduce transportation costs for our constituents. Additionally, many studies have cited that as we make communities more walkable and therefore livable, it has a long-term impact on their value.
And then many of you who have heard me talk plenty of times and my concerns about budget and pavement preservation, that was my biggest concern when we started talking about this. However, in reading the ordinance and going through it with Gunnar, it really puts little impact on the actual pavement preservation dollars. And ultimately, in the long run, if we right-size roads and design for the public the way we have been, there's opportunity to actually reduce lane miles of road in the future, which will impact or positively impact the pavement preservation budget. Many of you are aware, all of you are aware, that our county is very diverse as far as people, population, land, everything, all the way throughout the county. So the way we have written the ordinance and it's structured is it's very loose, and it will give us the opportunity to consider the needs and desires from the different areas of the counties or different areas of the county and design infrastructure appropriate for those areas. We're not talking about just sticking a bike lane on every road throughout the county. It's sidewalk, bike lanes, traffic calming, all of the above. There is a section in the ordinance that talks about exceptions and exclusions. Basically, the gist of this section is to keep the UG from getting boxed into a corner and having to do something that is not in the best interest of the government or the citizens of Wyandotte County.
I think because this conversation was carried on for quite some time with the infrastructure action team, we felt it was appropriate that they continued tracking its potential implementation. So a part of the ordinance does put some accountability and responsibility on the Public Health Department's infrastructure action team to do some of this follow-up. And again, both Troy and myself and other departments are involved in the infrastructure action team. It's also done a really good job of creating a group of community stakeholders that are attuned to these types of issues, but certainly spread out across all of the unified government. So we get a lot of reach, a lot of bang for our buck working with the infrastructure action team and the existing committee and that committee's infrastructure that they've already created. And I think the other important part here is, Troy's hit hard a couple of times here that this is a broad policy ordinance. It's meant to be a North Star. It's meant to focus on the things that we're already doing. It also is an interesting opportunity for us, as we will hear later on in this agenda. One of the PSP projects is a countywide mobility plan. And that countywide mobility plan, which we hope to launch in early 2021, is a great opportunity to talk about the things that people really want to talk about when they talk about complete streets, which is, where are we going to do this? What are the projects? What is the design of that project going to look like? How are we going to prioritize projects? We did not want to put any of those standards in this policy because we wanted it to be so flexible. And the reason we wanted to keep it flexible is so that we could have these conversations as we move forward with our different planning exercises, with our different area plans, and really fine tune what a complete street in, for instance, Armourdale looks like versus a complete street in Piper. And so we think that the timing is starting to sync up a little bit, and we have a good place to couch some of these conversations about more detailed issues around complete streets. So in conclusion, I think we would just want to say that, again, this is an ordinance that's we've been working on essentially since 2011. It is the policy of the state and federal government to have complete streets. We are out of compliance with the state and the feds. And I think for us, we've put a lot of public input into this, sought a lot of public input and have done a couple of revisions, both with the IAT and with Public Works and others. And so I'll let Troy conclude.
Yeah, and as we design roads, and we currently are, we're using best practices. Complete streets are considered best practices from the transportation, planning, and engineering side. As we've noted before, we are already doing this when we design, both from an engineering public works standpoint, and I know Gunnar and his staff are doing this from a planning standpoint with developments that are coming in. So really just codifies what we're already doing.
And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Gunnar and Troy, very much. And I know that we breezed through that pretty quickly, so we do want the commission to have time to ask your questions or make your comments. And I would just say that it's important in the context that the ordinance is stronger than the resolution because it adopts this as policy of our unified government. And I think it's also important to note that with every new project or redesigned project, we are going to consider all uses, but we're always going to have budgetary issues in front of us as we move forward with any kind of project. So as they've stated, you know, it's a strategy and it's always going to be top of mind, and we're going to do as much of it as we can with the money that we can. So with that, comments or questions from the commission, please.
This is Commissioner Philbrook. What I appreciate about this is the fact that, yes, complete streets are definitely different around the community because different communities need different things. And we can't do a rubber stamp, all the streets look the same. I think the different communities need to, yes, be part of it so they can help make the decision on what they want their streets to be and what they want them to be able to do. So I appreciate this different approach. Thanks.
Commissioner Ramirez has his hand up.
Yes, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. Thank you, Gunnar and Troy, for the presentation. I'm complete support of this. This actually, complete streets actually goes along hand in hand with an item on our next committee's agenda of climate action and making our environment more sustainable. And that helps. Infrastructure is a very important part of that. I just have a couple questions and comments on parts of the ordinance itself. On a big thing that stuck with me, I was very happy that we had put in there. It's section 32-400B2, talking about implementing streets and neighborhoods with historic disinvestment. I think that's amazing that we have that in there. There are some areas in our community that don't see a lot of investment and beatification. And so implementing this is going to be amazing for those areas. So I'm happy that we put that emphasis on those areas. And then the other part is the green streets and tying in our stormwater. I know at the beginning of the year, stormwater was a very big issue that we have yet to resolve. And I hope that we get to resolve sometime soon. And so I think this also, introducing this complete streets gives us the opportunity again to come back as a commission and work alongside with this ordinance with the complete streets and make a stormwater system that works efficiently, but also affordable for our residents. So I'm happy that's in there. And then the last item I had, and I believe Gunnar, you had briefly went over it. Who is part of the infrastructure action team?
Yes, this is Gunnar Hand. To answer that question, the Infrastructure Action Team is, it lives within the Public Health Department. They meet monthly. It includes lots of different departments, and then they can come in freely. So Planning and Urban Design is a regular attendee. Public Works is a regular attendee. Parks and Rec is there occasionally. It all kind of depends on what's on the agenda, but all in all, I think the ones that I've been to over the last 6 months, it's always been someone from planning and always been somebody from Public Works. And then a whole host of, and let me roll back, a whole host of community members are a part of that too. So Bike Walk KC is a part of that. The Whole Person's been a part of it. Health Forward Foundations is a part of it. Dot Agency, El Centro, Mox is a part of it. CABA is a part of it. Groundworks Energy is a part of it. Rosedale is a part of it. Most, but not all of these include the local stakeholders that they bring into those conversations to help implement policy projects, things of that nature.
Okay.
Pretty diverse group.
Okay, I'm happy that we have not only internal departments and agencies, but also outside community input in this. So I'm very happy about that. That was my last thing. And just overall, I'm happy that we have this going through and that we're taking this as a priority. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in this and who has worked very hard on this. It looks great, and I can't wait to see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other comments from our standing committee members?
There are no more hands up.
Okay, thank you so much. If not, I know that we've received requests to speak on this item as well as letters of support. So I would ask the clerk to begin allowing for the list of speakers. And keep in mind that you have 3 minutes, and the clerk will be alerting you at the 1 minute remaining time mark. So with that, Madam Clerk, I would hand it to you to lead us into the speakers, please.
At this time, we have Kendra Burgess with The Whole Person and support.
Give me just a second. I'm trying to get her on here. Ms. Burgess, you're on.
Okay, hello. Hi, yes, my name is Kendra Burgess, and I'm the Public Policy Coordinator at The Whole Person, which is a center for independent living that provides resources to people with disabilities to be able to live independently in their communities and age with dignity. And so we are happy to support the Complete Streets Ordinance. We've offered services in both Kansas and Missouri for over the last 40 years. And so we believe that Complete Streets will create greater independence for people with disabilities. So it means greater access to the community for people who are hearing impaired, blind or low vision, wheelchair users, even home care givers, which is a growing industry. Because within our organization and the type of work that we do, it's been proven that home and community-based medical assistance is a lot cheaper for everyone, and the state included. And so having Complete Streets means that folks who are receiving care in their home or in a community-based setting can access jobs, healthcare, even parks and rec. So recently, my coworkers and I have been doing park tours around the city, just trying to assess which areas are accessible for people with disabilities. And we found that there are parks that are accessible, but then sometimes the sidewalks leading to those parks are, there are cracks in the pavement or other challenges that make it really difficult for people with various mobility issues. And so in creating greater access, for our sidewalks, our roads, bridges, all of these things helps bolster. Yes, thank you. And also, over half of the people that we serve are minorities or people of color. And as Commissioner Ramirez remarked, Complete Streets would provide a more equitable community because people with disabilities and people who are economically depressed tend to not have access to the same resources for infrastructure upkeep. And so we are happy to support this proactive piece of ordinance and legislation that would help people with disabilities to realize that they are welcomed in the community and that their local infrastructure and planning committees are thinking about them in terms of their access to their community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. If we could have our next speaker, please.
We have Robin Shook in support with the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Robin Shook, and I am a researcher at a local medical institution. I have my PhD from the Arnold School of Public Health at the University of South Carolina, and I specialize in public health interventions to improve community health. I'm speaking to you today as an expert in physical activity and health and as the chairman of the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan, which is a coalition of diverse organizations from the 6-county region. I would like to advocate for the adoption of Complete Streets Ordinance for several reasons. First, being physically active is one of the most important determinants of health. In fact, strong research suggests it is attributable to 17% of all deaths, which is more than diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol, hypertension, and even smoking, due to the fact that most Americans and 70% of Wyandotte County residents do not get recommended levels of physical activity. Second, the good news is you don't need to run a marathon to see the benefits of physical activity. In fact, over the half of the benefits of physical activity is achieved when you go from no physical activity to moving just a little, even 10 minutes per day. Little things add up. Third, most Wyandotte County residents do not obtain enough physical activity. We, the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan, recently released the 2020 Kansas City Regional Report Card on Physical Activity, which is available on our website, kcphysicalactivityplan.org. This data-driven report examined various indicators of physical activity in our region using local data. Overall physical activity earned a grade of C-, as only 42% of our children and 30% of Wyandotte County adults meet national recommendations for physical activity.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Additionally, active transportation in our region earned an F, as only 5% of children bike to school and only 1% of residents walk or bike to work. This failing grade is not a surprise, as the community and built environment in our region received a C-, with only 32% of Wyandotte County residents living in a highly walkable neighborhood. And so that brings me to the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan and our support of the Complete Streets Ordinance. The Kansas City Physical Activity Plan is a diverse group of local organizations, including Children's Mercy, KC Healthy Kids, Bike Walk KC, Calvary Community Outreach, the UMKC Health Equity Institute, among others. We have engaged over the past 12 months all sectors of society, including schools, healthcare, parks and rec, and faith-based settings. We've hosted over 50 meetings and engaged over 520 individuals.
Sir, thank you so much for your comments. Appreciate that. And if we could have our next speaker, please.
We have Jason Norbury in support with the Downtown Shareholders.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. I'm Jason Norbury, Executive Director of Downtown Shareholders. Downtown Shareholders is in support in the adoption of the Complete Streets Ordinance. Downtown has been one of the communities in the county that has already benefited, I think, from a lot of the strategies from the Complete Streets Resolution and the design ideas that have been worked not only into our planning documents, but into our downtown master plan. You can see that in our current upgraded streetscape in the 700 block of Minnesota, the coming upgraded streetscape in the 600 block of Minnesota, as well as the improvements surrounding the transit center there at 7th and Minnesota itself. Not only is that something that makes our downtown a beautiful and a healthier place to be, but it also has a real impact on economic development. Studies have shown that projects that include complete streets elements can generate up to 50% more jobs than a sort of a car-only project. People tend to spend more time. One of the things that downtown shareholders, or I specifically, have always said is that we need more people in these areas, and having these kinds of amenities that are very walkable, bikeable, attractive to people and on a non-car scale is that people tend more time. And as a result, when they spend more time, they tend to spend more money. So that can increase not only property values for businesses and areas of that nature, but can also improve sales tax generation in a given district that has a complete street in front of it. Finally, I think increasing walking and biking has an impact on economics as well, in that many of our people in our community don't have access to a car or have limited access to a car, and making the street network walkable or bikeable where they don't need a car or have easy access to transit reduces their costs because they don't need to purchase and maintain and insure a car, which allows them to spend a higher percentage of their income.
Remaining.
Thank you. In the district or in the area, which once again allows for a greater sales tax revenue, but also improves the economic well-being of our citizens surrounding that. So once again, Downtown Shareholders is in full support for complete streets, this ordinance being adopted, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norbury. Appreciate it. And if we could have our next speaker, please.
Yes, we have Andrea Clark in support with the KC Healthy Kids.
Hi, my name's Andrea Clark. I work at KC Healthy Kids. We also host the Greater Kansas City Food Policy Coalition. So I'm here for a couple different groups this evening. As a former resident of Strawberry Hill and a current employee downtown in the El Centro building, we've already had quite a few people talk about the benefits to the physical, social, and mental health, especially of kids in our community. So I'll focus on something a little different, food insecurity and food access. About 10% of residents in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, don't have access to a vehicle. And so what this means is that running everyday errands like going to the grocery store or the pharmacy or getting to the doctor, they face additional challenges and barriers doing that. In 2019, the Greater Kansas City Food Policy Coalition released a report called Better by Bus, and it was full of findings and recommendations of how to improve grocery shopping for people who rely on public transportation. Because they don't have access to a vehicle. And one of the things that we found after talking to over 300 bus riders in Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri, was one of their concerns was around safety, accessibility, and just their general comfort. And part of that was, not having a bench at the bus stop, or not having sidewalks, or sidewalks were in disrepair, or there wasn't a clear crosswalk, and they had to cross 4 or 5 lanes of traffic to get from the bus stop to the grocery store. And it's simple infrastructure improvements in designs that can make those everyday errands to the grocery store easier and safer for people in our community. So in closing, we support this ordinance for public health, for access to healthy food, and for healthy community that's designed for the people who need it the most.
Ms. Clark, thank you so much for your comments. And if we can have the next speaker, please.
We have Edgar Galicia in support with CABA.
Hi, my name is Edgar Galicia. Thank you for entertaining all of these. There is very little I can say more than what my colleagues and all the community leaders are saying to the benefits of these ordinance. However, I would like to mention one more thing, one very important thing, and that is that the central area has been working on becoming a destination site for the last 5 to 7 years, and a very important next step to attract more investment to our area and the commercial corridor is the creation and construction of easy access, better walkability, share roads, cycling, and enjoyment of the streets in our area. And I would definitely expect from anybody who wants the growth of our community to be for and forward on this ordinance. We need it, but more importantly, we deserve it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Galicia, thank you very much. And next speaker, please.
Chairman, we have Broderick Crawford in support with the NBC Community Development Corporation.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for this opportunity for you to listen to those of us who are in support of the Complete Streets Ordinance. I am Broderick Crawford with the NBC Community Development Corporation, a faith-based nonprofit created by my church, New Bethel Church. I'm also a long-term active member of the IAT committee. I am speaking in support of the Complete Streets Ordinance as it aligns with many of the projects that each of you are familiar with. So for example, the work that's currently happening along Jersey Creek, which the community hasn't seen work along the Jersey Creek Trail in over 40 years. The Community Health Improvement Plan, which many of you are familiar with. The Complete Streets aligns very nicely with the Complete Streets Ordinance. Then also health. You've heard several people mention health. As we are more active, we are more healthier, which means we have greater positive health outcomes, which decreases the burden of uncompensated care that many of our clinicians and FQHC has to bear. Also, we'll talk about COVID. As we know, COVID has forced a lot of us inside because of quarantining and isolation and things like that. But what it has also done is increase participation in our parks. And so how are we aligning Complete Streets with the great work that needs to be done in parks, whether they're on 3rd Street all the way out to the Wyandotte County Lake? And so because of Complete Streets, it has the flexibility to allow what is best for each of those communities to be utilized in a more healthier way. As many of you may know, that Wyandotte County has finished in the bottom 5 of the county health rankings since 2009. Complete Streets would increase physical activity, which would help to decrease some of that burden of why we have such an unhealthy county. I'll also speak to 1 in 3 people.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. 1 in 3 residents in Wyandotte County does not have car transportation. Complete Streets encourages walking and encourages biking. It encourages those things that allow folks to be able to do within their economic means. Finally, I'll speak to a personal experience. I personally am a bike rider. When the Shareholders were put in many places throughout our city drivers did not respect those folks who want to ride their bikes in the appropriate places. Complete Streets enforces that, encourages that, and allows those of us who like to bike, walk, and run to do so in a very safe way. Thank you again for your time this evening and listening to us. Again, Broderick Crawford, NBC Community Development Corporation, in favor of the Complete Streets Ordinance.
Mr. Crawford, Thank you so much for your comments. Good to hear from you tonight. And Madam Clerk, I believe we might have one more speaker. Is that correct?
We have two.
Two more
Chairman.
speakers? Okay.
Misty Slater, in support with the American Heart Association.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Misty Slater. I am coming to you on behalf of American Heart Association, Kansas City, in support of the Complete Streets Ordinance. We all want and deserve a safe and healthy community to live in. And Complete Streets policies can make all communities and neighborhoods more livable by ensuring all people in all neighborhoods can get safely wherever they need to go, whether that's work or school or the library or grocery stores or parks. We know that there are fewer crashes involving pedestrians when streets have sidewalks, but in addition to the safety concerns, we know that Complete Streets also have benefits to local economies. Complete Streets projects have been shown to have broader economic gains and increased employment and higher property values in those communities that pass those ordinances. And safety improvements of Complete Streets can have financial benefits too. In one report put out by Smart Growth America, they found that Complete Streets saved $18.1 million in collision and injury costs in just a year. And not only that, but the ordinance just makes health a priority. It shows that people in neighborhoods generally get about 35 to 45 more minutes of physical activity in a week when they live in a walkable neighborhood than a less walkable neighborhood. And they're less likely to be overweight or obese as well. And we at American Heart Association gladly support the adoption of this proposed Complete Streets ordinance. We believe that living in a neighborhood where it's easier and safer to walk and move around reduces a person's risk for heart disease, diabetes, and types of cancers. And because of that, we ask each of you to vote in favor of this measure. And thank you very much for your time and the ability to speak with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Ms. Slater. Appreciate it. And Madam Clerk, our final speaker, please.
Madam Chair, that was the last speaker. However, we did receive information from Michael Kelly, which submitted letters of support from several different entities. And I can read that information if that's okay.
Yes, if you would read the names of the organizations that sent letters, that would be great.
Absolutely. Michael Kelly, if I did not mention, is with Bike Walk KC and is definitely in support. The letters received were from AARP, AHA, which is the American Heart Association, Bike Walk KC, CABA, which is the Central Avenue Betterment Association, Dot Agency, El Centro Inc., the Greater Kansas City Food Policy Coalition, Health Forward Foundation, KC Healthy Kids, KC Physical Activity Plan, MOSCA, which is the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault, NBC Community Development Corporation, and The Whole Person.
Thank you so much. And I would remind you that Mr. Groneman, our BPU board member Groneman, has joined us, so he'll be available for voting.
Thank you so much.
Is there further discussion among this committee on this item? And
Madam
if
Chair, this is
yes,
Gunnar, and I see someone has raised their hand. I don't know if they wanted to speak or not.
okay. Who has their hand raised?
I have Zach Flanders. Would you like me to allow him to speak?
Yes, unmute Zach and allow him to speak, please.
Mr. Flanders, you're on.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Zach Flanders. I'm a resident at 3812 South Thompson Circle in Rosedale, and I am just coming as someone who loves to get around the city by bike. I support this ordinance, and 3 reasons why. Number 1, safety. Number 2, climate change, and then financial considerations. So as I mentioned, I like to get around by bike. I used to bike to work back before the COVID-19 pandemic, but now I'm biking with my kids to their grandparents where they spend the day every day. So I'm out there with my family on a bike on the streets in KCK every day. And my biggest concern is safety. And, I found a pretty safe route that's a little bit longer than a direct route, but my experience does suggest that we could make some improvements to safety for people who choose to walk or bike to where they're going. And anything you can do to make our streets safer for my family and families like mine that like to walk and bike is really greatly appreciated. And then number 2, climate change. Our transportation system is a huge part of global climate emissions. I believe that complete streets are an important part of the transition to a low carbon future. And as someone who has kids, I think we're already experiencing effects of climate change, but I really fear for what the world's going to be like when our kids are older. And I think it's important that we act now and keep climate change as a forefront part of why we're doing this. And then finally, financial considerations. It's already been mentioned that over time, bicycles and walking require much less costly infrastructure, and there could be opportunities to reduce lane miles and things like that. But it's also a benefit for families to be able to get around by bike.
Remaining.
Thank you. We're able to get by just having a single car for 2 working adults and 2 kids in our household. And I can share with you, that's a huge financial benefit for us to not have to have that second car payment. So it's just something to think about as a benefit to the residents of the city to be able to get around, feel like they can get around safely by bike or foot could be a financial benefit to lots of people as well. So thank you. Let's support the ordinance and appreciate everything that you're doing.
Mr. Flanders, thank you so much. And with that, I want to say to all of our speakers, prior to March of this year, I was seeing many of you on a regular basis in person. And it hurts my heart that I cannot see you in person and haven't seen you in person for what seems like an eternity, but it's so nice to see you here. And with that, any comments, questions from our committee members, please? If not, I would take a motion.
Move to approve Ramirez.
We have
Second,
a-
Mark.
And Angela Markley with a second. Thank you very much. I'll take roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. Thank you all very much. That motion carries. Item 3 is an update on our body camera project. Many of you who are on may want to stay on and hear. This is information only, and I believe that I have seen Deputy Chief Kent Anderson and Deputy Chief Steve Hallmark. So I'm going to imagine that one or both of you is bringing forward our update on this item.
Yes, this is Deputy Chief Ken Anderson, and I'm going to do the body worn camera portion of the presentation, and then Major Hallmark is doing the tips grants.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, sir.
I did bring a presentation. I don't know if they can get that up there for us.
We'll see if Rocky can help with screen sharing.
Do you have the presentation, Deputy Chief?
I think Major Hallmark does.
Rocky, it's the PowerPoint I sent earlier. Are you able to share that, or do I need to do that?
If you're not able to, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're in October of 2020. Can you go down to the phase one, Steve? We're pretty much completed with phase one. We've got about 75% of the equipment delivered from WatchGuard. So we're going to move into phase two here in November. So we're making progress. Can you switch to the next slide, Steve? As you know, 2017 is when we started the process. September 29th of 2017, we awarded a grant from the Department of Justice for $342,000, which was an in-kind grant that we had to match, which we did. And the grant was supposed to end in September 30th, 2019, and we had to get an extension due to kind of COVID-related stuff and other projects. And we have purchased all the equipment, so the money has been encumbered and used. Next slide. As you all know, the RFP was issued in February. We had 7 proposals we received from different companies, which we narrowed down to WatchGuard and GovDirect. And then we did, go ahead and go to the next one, Steve. We did a short trial period where we actually installed each of the products in the cars, and then the officers wore those companies' body-worn cameras. And we ended up selecting WatchGuard. And then, of course, we had the COVID that slowed down the process and meeting and getting our project complete. Next slide. So this is the equipment that we have purchased. So we have 101 kits that are the in-car video systems, and included is a body-worn camera. And then we have 202 body-worn cameras plus 101. So we'll have 303 body-worn cameras that we'll have deployed. So every officer and every sergeant in the field will be wearing body-worn cameras. Places like the Detective Bureau, we're going to have a pool of body-worn cameras to use, so they won't each be issued their own like the officers that are in the field. Also, the Animal Services Unit will all be wearing body-worn cameras, but they will not have the cameras in the vehicle, but they will be furnished the body-worn cameras. As part of our plan with WatchGuard, we get a refresh plan in 3 years. So that means that they're going to redo our cameras, our body-worn cameras in 3 years. And then we get the upgrades for the evidence management system, which is the system that actually holds all the videos. And we got that with the plan that we got. And so the total cost of the program was about $1.4 million. Next slide. So starting now, we're going to start installation of vehicles probably around the beginning of November, where each vehicle that we have is going to be installed with the new camera system. You know, some are Ford Crown Victorias, some are Ford Explorers. So we have some different vehicles, and that will be done at KCOM in Olathe. And then, so the training for the officers, WatchGuard actually has a online training video, which I believe is 2 hours long. So we're going to have time to get all the officers through that online training. And then once we go to each different station and unit, we will give the officers then an hour-and-a-half block of training when we go there and we actually have the cameras in the cars and the body-worn cameras. Next slide. So this is kind of a quick implementation timeline. There's actually has been one change. The rollout, WatchGuard is actually coming January 4th is going to be their first day on the ground to help us. They're going to start uploading all the software on our servers at each location. And then due to bid doesn't take effect till June 14th, and that's when the officers can bid for their different places within the police department. We didn't want to issue cameras out to somebody that was going to be stationed in East Patrol or was stationed in East Patrol and then bid to West Patrol. So what we're doing is the specialized units first, which is going to be traffic and the special operations unit. And then we will go to Midtown. And so those two dates will be swapped. But hopefully we'll keep our timeline on installation. Next slide. Community engagement. So this is going to be a big part of hopefully informing the community what a body camera will do, what it won't do, what we expect from our officers when they're wearing it, when to turn them on, when to turn them off, and how we're going to report them, how we're going to store them, and just those types of issues. Next slide. These were just kind of some general questions that we will answer when we start doing the, don't know if it's going to be by Zoom or they're going to be like in-house community meetings, but we plan to have one each time we go to a station to have some type of rollout with the community as well as the officers in those particular communities that they're working, whether that be in Argentine or that be out west or downtown here. Next slide. And this is just some more community engagement, how we'll reach out to neighborhood groups, community leaders, make sure everyone understands what the body-worn camera rollout will be. We will have the traditional media, social media, Facebook, and when we roll this program out. Next slide. So like I said, WatchGuard will bring their representatives here, I think January 4th, 5th, and 6th. And that's going to be when they began uploading all of our servers. And then we will start with the special operations unit and the traffic unit to get the body-worn cameras issued out to the officers. Next slide. These are just some of our community engagement tools we plan on using to get the word out of everything we're going to be doing and how the body-worn camera system will operate. Next slide. And this is kind of an outline of the community engagements that tentatively have been planned, so we can kind of get that up and running. Next slide. That was all for the body-worn cameras and the in-car cameras. Is there any questions about, I know I kind of went through it fast. Is there any questions about anything or how the process is going?
Deputy Chief, it's Commissioner Bynum. I think what we'll do is.
You're mute, Commissioner.
Okay, now I think I've got my finger off that mute button. It's Commissioner Bynum. I appreciate the presentation. I think we'll pause here and ask for any questions from the standing committee members. I know that this committee's been with you from the very beginning, working working on this project. And so even though it's been a nice long road, it is heartening to see that the implementation is finally upon us. So questions or comments from anyone on this committee, please?
I do
And
not see any hands raised, Commissioner.
thank you so much. If not, we thank you so much for the presentation, and this is information only. And so we can move now into the next presentation with our police department, which is the technology innovation for public safety portion. And I think you said Major Hallmark would take that section.
Yes.
Thank you. Major
You-
Hallmark, it's yours.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Assistant Chief Hallmark. I will be brief. The update for the Technology and Public Safety TIPS grant. We are in the final phase of installing our cameras, which will total 71 at intersections. 4 of those are pan tilt zoom cameras and 67 are license plate readers. We are working on enhancing our video management systems, and we are working through, we're currently sharing video management with other UG departments to include traffic and emergency management, which totals about another 170 cameras. We have signed a MOU with Kansas City, Missouri to federate them on camera access. That's scheduled currently to be turned on November 10th of this year. Initially, that'll be another 40 to 50 cameras that we have access to. And there will be more added at a later time. We are in discussion with federating with some Johnson County agencies. We're working through that. This program was greatly delayed also due to COVID and not being able to meet in person. And some of the vendors and so forth were not working. And that leads me to the Community Connect program, which ties in very closely. It's a partnership between law enforcement and businesses or neighborhood groups that allow businesses, neighborhood groups, or neighborhood members to selectively share their video directly with us. The businesses would allow their security cameras and video systems to be connected to the police department. We're currently developing the marketing and community outreach approaches. We're meeting again here in about a week and a half to talk through some specifics. We are working through some marketing materials for press releases, social media, etc. We are working through a short list of local businesses and neighborhood groups that we think would be a good fit for the initial run. And we're working with the vendor on setting up a remote Community Connect system so that those businesses and community members can come and kind of see what we're talking about and see a working product. And with that, I will answer any questions you might have.
Your questions from the committee?
I do not see any hands up, Commissioner.
Well, all right, we're quiet.
Commissioner Philbrook, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was slow on hand raising. Too many different buttons. What can I tell you? I really am excited to see the Community Connect part of the program because several years ago in the Business West area on State, that group that I belong to had started talking with the police and community policing about possibility of doing something like that that would allow those additional businesses to actually help us in apprehension by letting us look at their cameras. I'm so excited to see that it has moved along, and thank you very much for following up on and doing all this work.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, any other comments or questions for these gentlemen?
I do not see any further hands.
Okay, if not, this was an information only item. we greatly appreciate the work of our police department on bringing these initiatives forward. Again, I know it was a long road, but we really appreciate all your work and your efforts. So info only on those two items. And that brings us to 2021 CMIP project report. And I believe we have Jeff Fisher here along with some of his teammates to bring us the update.
Thank you, and good evening. We're here tonight to highlight approved CMIP activities for 2021 in both Public Works and Parks and Rec. There's a lot of people involved, of course, with developing CMIP and implementing CMIP. We have a few here tonight to make presentations. We have the Director of Water Pollution Control, Kirk Winters, Troy Shaw, the County Engineer, John Kelly, the Director of Buildings and Logistics, and Angel Overt with the Deputy Director of Parks and Rec.
You guys are going to have to speak up a little bit.
We will be engaging this body again in November to begin developing the 2022-2026 CMIP. Before we get started, can we have the presentation?
Rocky, can you hear us? If we could get the presentation up, please.
Okay. Give me just a second. I did not know I was going to be running the presentation. Just a second, please.
All right, thank you. Sorry.
Jeff, I can pull it up on mine if you want me to run it. Rocky, if you would rather that, I can do that.
I'm getting it pulled up right now.
Thank you, Rocky. Thanks again. Well, before we get started, I'd like to pause and reflect on this photo right here. It's important because it points out how long we've depended on much of the infrastructure. This is Minnesota Avenue around 1910. And the community's still driving on it. The UG's still maintaining it. We're plowing it every winter. A lot of investment's been made in that asset alone over the decades. So it's a reminder that the decisions we make are long-lasting and impacts many generations. And when we're in the CMIP discussions, we're not talking about decisions for today or even tomorrow. It's about years ahead. I know we take a lot of time with commission to walk through this and make smart investments. And so next slide, please. You'll see this influence the Public Works strategic plan in many ways. And I'll just point out the last value at the bottom of the slide, smart investment. The key we know is being data-driven, being strategic, and being objective as we possibly can in making these investments. Next slide, please. So it's worth noting before we get started, there's a difference between capital and maintenance. When we say CMIP, it is capital maintenance improvement program. Capital are usually one-time, long-lasting investments like a new facility or a new road. Maintenance is dollars spent every year to maximize the longevity of an existing asset. It was worth pointing that out before we go any further. I'm going to now turn it over. Well, next slide, please, Rocky. So we've made a lot of investments, of course, every year. They're big and small. We're going to be talking about mostly major capital and maintenance activities. And there's a couple of reports, status reports on projects that we have ongoing that span multiple years. I'll hand it over to Kirk Winters, Water Pollution Control.
Go ahead, next slide. I'm Kurt Winters, Director of Water Pollution Control, and this slide here is just depicting some of our crews, some of the ongoing work we had, and some past work we had done down by the river. Next slide. So mainly today, I just want to give you an update on a few of our major projects that are ongoing and will be happening into 2021. So we have here is a project out at Walcott, which is our new interceptor, a new pump station, and our brand new wastewater treatment facility at Walcott. It is underway. We look to have that completed in 2021. So the fall of 2021, we should have that facility up and running and the other one decommissioned. Next slide. The next major project we have is our Call Point Biosolids project. This is another major undertaking we've had going on. If you remember, there was a risk that we had of getting rid of our raw sludge out at Deffenbaugh, and we mitigated that by coming to you and asking to do this major project. So we take that risk, put it into our hands, and we can help control that with processing our solids and getting them to a Class B product that we can then put out onto crop fields and get the benefit of sustainable processes that way. It is a large project. We are underway with that. We're just now finished up with the body of design, so we're going into the design work. This project will not probably be completed until 2023. It'll take 2 years of constructions if we cannot find ways to speed that up, but it looks like at least a 2-year construction project. We are underway. It is going into design. It is just a major undertaking. It's a lot of parts and pieces that goes into that. Next slide. Our last slide is asset management. This is our program where we take care of all of our assets, whether they're in the ground or on top of the ground with our treatment facilities. So this one is, again, we're putting our funds into making sure we're rehabbing and renewing our assets and taking care of them. And we use a system called asset management where we look at our risk, we look at the conditions of all the equipment, and then we prioritize where to spend the money to get the biggest bang for the buck and make sure we're protecting those assets. We do have over 800 miles of line, 5 treatment facilities, and 76 pump stations and 9 flood pump stations to take care of. So we got to make sure we're using the funds in the right locations at the right time. So again, that's a program we use. We are investing a lot of money in that program to make sure we're spending the funds at the right place. And that's it for me.
Jeff?
County Engineer Charles going to take over here.
Jeff, it's Commissioner Bynum. Before we move on, can I ask a question of Kurt? Thank you. On the Walcott plant project, out along 435 and then far out west on Leavenworth Road, I'm seeing the big pipe, the blue and the black. Is there a water line project in addition, or are those both part of the Walcott project?
From about Donahue on out towards Walcott facility, that's our interceptor that we're putting in place that'll be gravity feeding this pump station. The picture on the screen right now, that hole in the ground will be the new pump station heading to the plant. So what you're seeing is the pipe for that. I'm unaware if there is a water project in that location, but okay. I do know that's our interceptor coming from pump station 50.
I'm fairly certain that's our project, Commissioner Bynum.
Okay, thank you.
That's the wastewater interceptor feeding that plant.
Okay, thanks. You can continue. Thanks.
Okay. Troy Shaw, you still with us?
Yes, this is Troy Shaw, County Engineer. One picture we put on here that I enjoy is the new picture of the Turner Diagonal Interchange at I-70 there. So I just wanted to get that on there. It's about as fresh as you can get of a picture. So project that turned out really well. So I just wanted to get that on there too. And Dave Reno got it on there. So thank you, Dave. Next one, Rocky. So the first project up, we've talked about this before, 7th and Central. We have a grant from KDOT to do geometric improvements at that intersection. That we will start. We've been designing it over the last year. That project will bid in the midsummer next year and hopefully start construction in the fall. That'll be bid through KDOT local projects. It'll consist of geometric improvements to the intersection, and also some safety improvements going along 7th Street and on Central, going a block in each direction or so. That'll help with pedestrian and vehicular safety as well. Next, Rocky. This is another Safe Routes to School project. We've had quite a few of them. This one's a pretty large one. It connects Northwest Middle School to Crothers Elementary. It actually covers 2 roads. Goes on Cleveland and also on Waverly from 18th to 10th, and then there's a couple connectors in between on 13th and 11th Street. So I'm pretty excited about that project, and that's under design right now, and it'll be bid late next year. So it'll be don't know when construction will start. It'll be late next year or early in 2022. Next, Rocky.
This is Jeff Fisher. I'll just quickly highlight this one and then give it back to Troy. We have 2.4 million for next year for 2021. That's mostly O&M and small project. That 2.4 million is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, as we've discussed earlier in the year, that's not going to get us very far, and this fund is becoming insolvent. I think Commissioner Ramirez mentioned resolving this issue, and we are ready to re-engage. So unless you have any questions, I'll hand it back over to Troy. Troy?
All right, next one, Rocky. We've talked about this before. I think it's been bumped a year or so due to budget concerns, but this is the improvements at Hutton and Leavenworth Road intersection. Early this year, we completed a study kind of analyzing the area and looking to see what design we should do there. So in the budget, we have money starting next year for design and right-of-way acquisition, then the following 2 years for construction. You can kind of see on that picture the blue line on the right side. That's one chunk of the road, basically that hill that comes up there. We'll be cutting that hill down about 12 feet. So that's a large portion of this project, which is why it'll span multiple years to get done.
Well,
and then
go back. I have never, ever thought that a roundabout was the safest thing to use. And I've said that since day one. And I know staff thinks that they've got everything just the way they want it, but guys don't have to answer to the community. I do not agree, nor do I like the idea of that being a roundabout. That should be a signaled intersection, and you guys have yet to show me that a roundabout is safer than a regular signalized system.
I'm going to jump in. This is Commissioner Bynum. I'm going to ask on behalf of Mike Kane and myself that we do look at what a signal intersection would be here and also the data that shows that the roundabout is the better option. And believe me, Commissioner Kane, I do hear this, maybe not the same level of disdain for roundabouts, but I do hear them, especially from this area of the community. And I personally kind of like them, but nonetheless, the community doesn't seem to like them. So if there's a possibility on this item of having Commissioner Kane and I either meet with you by Zoom or in person whatever we think is the safest way to go, to look at the data and then the possibility of a signalized intersection. Thank you very much.
Hey, and Troy,
Absolutely.
before, long before you got here, I voiced my opinion about it. So I appreciate your work. You just have to understand what the community wants.
Yeah. Oh, I completely understand. And I don't know, Jeff, I might interrupted you, but we do have that data, and we're glad to sit down with you and talk about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, to both commissioners, we'll arrange to visit with you after this meeting sometime.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Philbrook has a question.
Commissioner Philbrook.
Yes, I would also like to apprised of your information as well, the data. I'm kind of a data-driven person, and I'm sure people will be asking me as well, even though it is not my area. It doesn't mean that in sometime in the future that there won't be a roundabout proposed in District 8. And so I would really like to see some of that data that supports your decision, please. Thank you.
You.
Certainly.
Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
So this is Troy again. I think we're to finish the engineering slides up with pavement preservation. And we've talked about that multiple times. And when we were putting this together and it came up, I do want to note the 7.5 million total investment. And I want to commend the commission because that's a huge step forward from where we were at even 3 years ago. We've made a lot of improvements, and I think you'll see that going forward with how we do roads and our treatment. So I do appreciate that. So we'll continue to work on our pavement management, different treatments, mill and overlay, alleyways, and curb and gutter moving this year as well.
Next slide, Rocky. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioner and Administration. This is John Kelly, Director of Facilities. We're just going to go over a few slides tonight of some of the projects that we're continuing to work on both the county, the city, and some of the county and city parking lot structures. So Rocky, you can move to the next slide, please. So here we're talking about an investment of $4.4 million total investment over the next 3 to 4 years, involving some PBC dollars that have been approved to do major rehabilitation to the courthouse. We have currently, over the last couple of years, have been working on some design for both electrical, mechanical systems throughout the whole facility and the roof system for this facility. So we've partnered with Amoresco here within the last year. That's allowing us to bring them on board to help facilitate getting some of these projects done. So we're really excited. We have had some delays due to COVID-19 with some of the engineering, with the architectural components and the engineering of the mechanical equipment with the roofing, but we're hoping this spring that will get out and get on out for bid, as well as start addressing the elevator. So we're just really excited to see some of these county facilities that have long overdue start to get some dollars spent to get them up to where they need to be. Next slide, please. Next slide here is basically an ongoing project that I continue to have every year within our budget to keep our parking structures and our surface parking lots up to speed. As everybody knows, parking lots, get total wear and tear due to the day in and day out of cars going back and forth, including the weather conditions where we're bringing salt in off vehicles into these structures. The last couple of years with Jeff and his team, we've been doing some green infrastructure to some of our projects, as some of the commission is known, with our Merck grocery store and our new juvenile maintenance facility and some of those parking areas. We've used the green infrastructure component, as you see here in these slides. So that's also been a nice feature to be able to add. So that's just an ongoing project that we continue because of the wear and tear that these facilities see, and it also addresses as far as cleanliness and lighting,
Another thing that we continue to support doing is in these parking structures is addressing the lighting, switching it out to high energy needs to LED to start saving money and just getting a better appearance of those facilities. Next slide, please. And then this next slide here talks about our City Hall here at 701. You know, this building back when it was built had some early on sight of water conditions leaking to the ground floor, which had us move our police department and some other agencies out of there some years back, and it just in time continued to deteriorate around the diaphragm of the building in the plaza area. And I think a lot of the commissioners that themselves that park down in the underground parking lot can see some of the water infiltration that happens in there. And as you can see in the picture there, we did stabilize shoring over the last year to secure that the plaza area around the perimeter of the building was safely secured until we could get after this project. So I'm super excited to know that 2021 that we're going to be bringing on our team to start phase 1 of this project, which will allow us to go around the whole perimeter of City Hall on both the north, the south, east, and west, and get the temporary roofing and the brick pavers and the old fountain up front and have those issues addressed. So that's you know, over a course of a couple-year project, but we're excited for 2021 to start the first phase. So it's just a continuance of showing a lot of the work that we're doing here in the downtown with everybody knows we've done 3 new facilities here in the last year and a half, from a new fire station to a new juvenile justice facility and the new grocery store. So I'm just excited about the momentum that we continue to have, and some of these other facilities like City Hall will allow us to get the ground floor back in order to where essentially we can look at some of our folks that are out in possibly other buildings under leases and be able to bring them back here and utilize our own space. So unless anybody has any questions in regards to any of those projects, that's all I have.
Good evening, commissioners and administration. Angel Obert here with Parks and Recreation. I'll be going over some updates on a few projects that we have ongoing carrying into 2021. Next slide, please, Rocky. So we have our NERSA improvements, which is the neighborhood revitalization strategy area improvements to the City Park, Clifton Park, and Reagan Park area. These improvements include sidewalk curbs and general beautification. The picture here on the left is some sidewalk improvements at Reagan Park. We are currently in the process of finalizing plans for Clifton Park due to COVID. This project had been delayed a little bit, but it is a 2020 project, and we are excited to get started on that project. Some of those plans include a walking trail within the park, relocating the existing playground, and also replacing it as well, and doing some asphalt maintenance to the parking lot. Funding for 2021 and 2022 is being finalized, and those recommendations will be brought forward as we're still working on those items. This is about a $650,000 investment a year, and as everybody knows, due to COVID, our parks have been busier really this year more than ever. So seeing these improvements happening in our community, especially within our parks, is just huge for our neighborhoods. Next slide, please. We have the Wyandotte County Lake Study and Repair. This waterline study and replacement of a 50+ year system of old pipes that have been serving our lake buildings and our shelters. This project started, we started planning for this project back in 2012, and it began in 2015. So we are anticipating to start the final phase, which is the 6th phase in 2021. And that should take place from 83rd Street to Shelter 11 for some replacement. This has been about a $400,000 project per year, total investment. Next slide, please. We have the Trail Network Development Program. So this this budget and this program used to sit in Public Works, but Parks and Recreation took over this line item in 2019. And so we've been managing this project since then. And what we've been working on in 2020 is gathering our data from the master plan and also the community as well, and working with Benish on finalizing some recommendations on areas within the city to utilize these funds so that they align with the Trail Network Development Program. The previous slide, the NERSA improvements at Reagan Park was part of these projects, so we anticipate to continue some of that as well. Like I said, we are finalizing a presentation and plan to take those recommendations to the commission here in November. Next slide, please. And that is all I have for Parks and Recreation, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
I do not see any hands up, Commissioner.
Angel, it's Melissa Bynum. I just have to laugh because the water line project at the lake, I mean, especially during COVID, we've been in the lake many times over these last 8 months, and every time we're in there and we're driving around, my spouse that points out the water line and he says, there's where the water line comes through, and I'm like, I know it because you told me that last time we were in here. And so I just want you to know I'm very impressed, truly, sincerely impressed with the water line project at the lake. Now I seem to know all of the points where it starts and stops. So I can probably take you through them, but I truly appreciate that. And Mr. Fisher, are there more updates on this, or was that your entire presentation?
That wraps it up, Commissioner. We'll fill any questions you may have.
All right. Any questions, commissioners and Mr. Groneman? Questions for this team?
Commissioner Bynum, this is Melissa Sieben. I just wanted to note that the last slide, which was taken down, I don't know if everybody caught that, but we do have an online version of this information that highlights by map where things are happening. I know that when I started here over 5 years ago, that was something we didn't have. And I just want to point that out and make sure that everyone understands that's out there. And it also has historical information about where we've been working the last number of years. I think it's a great resource for anyone that's listening tonight. And I want to thank my team for that. So
yes, thank you. That is great information. And I just want to say to Jeff Fisher and Kurt and John and Troy and Angel and Jack Webb, who I know is also on the call, just how much we appreciate everything you are doing. I personally think everything that's happening is so exciting. It feels like we're just moving ahead by leaps and bounds. And the interesting part is, you know, that you're all doing it with just bare bones. And yet here we are seeing just such great improvements, and it is so appreciated. So Jeff and everyone that's working with you on these projects, it is sincerely appreciated. Anyone else?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, excellent presentation, and it was for information only. And it takes us to our next item, which is citywide mobility and transit-oriented design strategy. And it looks like we have Mr. Gunnar Hand back to tell us about this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Evening again, everyone. Again, my name's, Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. So the next three items on your which were a part of your blue sheet, basically are a recap of something we brought to the standing committee, I want to say 3 months ago now, where we were pursuing the MARC PSP grant program. That's their Planning Sustainable Places. At the time, we asked for your permission to go after 3 particular projects: the countywide mobility plan, the Heritage Trail in the Northeast neighborhood, as well as a Merriam Lane corridor study, which we're doing in partnership with the cities of Overland Park and Merriam. I'm happy to inform you that we've been approved for federal funding for all 3 of those programs. They were the 3 highest scoring projects on the Kansas side of the MARC PSP program, and the mobility plan was the highest scoring project in all of this year's cycle of the PSP program at MARC. So we're really proud of that. As I said then, I'll say now, all 3 projects fit within the advanced planning budget of my department in 2021. So all of this money is already there. However, because our local match specifically for the mobility plan is over the threshold, we do need an official vote to allow the CAO to sign the sponsorship agreements for the mobility plan. Mr. Bach will also sign the sponsorship agreements with for the other 2 programs, the Heritage Trail and the Merriam Lane, but they don't require a vote by this standing committee as they are below the threshold. But it was an opportunity for us to come in and just tell you that next year will be the year of transportation planning in the county. We hope to get we're working right now to get all 3 RFPs all buttoned up with the Mid-American Regional Council. We will probably release all 3 of them in January. And then we believe there is some synergy efficiency in those 3 processes, as the 2 corridor plans, if you will essentially be incorporated into this larger mobility plan at the end of the day. They just have a little bit more money to go a little bit deeper and add a little more detail. So with that, this specific request is asking that you approve $165,000 for our local match for the total of $300,000 mobility plan. MARC did fund us at 90% of our original request. If you recall, we said we were going to go 50-50 in on this project. My department felt it was important to fill in that $15,000 gap, go up to 165 local match for us so that we hit that $300,000 mark. In the consultant world, everything under $300,000 gets one area of focus and everything above it gets a little bit another. So it's kind of like buying a house right at $299. You want to hit that number just so that it rings some bells in the consultant world and we can get a wealth and diversity of responses. So with that, I'll take any questions about the mobility plan, but that pretty much suffices for the other 2 information only blue sheet items as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So you've really kind of rolled the last 3 items together, but with the mobility plan, we do need a vote, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Motion for approval, Commissioner Kane, of the plan.
Thank you.
Second, Ramirez.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions for Gunnar Hand? If not, we have a motion and a second, so we'll take roll call, please.
Roll call, Groneman,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye, and that carries. Thank you very much. And Public Works and Safety Committee and all of the staff that have joined us tonight, we thank you all so very much for all the time and effort that's been put in. Appreciate everything each one of you is doing for the community. And Mr. Groneman, please keep yourself safe. And we'll see you in November. Thank you for being here with us tonight. And that concludes this standing committee meeting. I'm going to pass it to my fellow Commissioner Angela Markley for Administration and Human Services. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, some committee members, staff, and the public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones while not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak. That is current guidance from the Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, in-person public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of the meeting. I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call, Philbrook.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Markley.
Here. We do have one revision to tonight's agenda. Item number 3, which is to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products, has been removed from tonight's agenda. Our first order of business is the minutes from our August 24th meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval, Commissioner Bynum.
Second, Ramirez.
There is a motion and a second. Roll call, please, on our minutes.
Roll call, Philbrook,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Markley.
Aye, thank you. Those minutes have been approved. That will take us to our first item on the agenda. We have 4 items total. Our first is a presentation on climate action KC. And it says Allie Porter is going to present, or at least promote the presenter of this item.
The presenter will actually be Mayor Mike Kelly, which Rocky has promoted him.
Oh, I see him. Welcome, Mayor Kelly. You may take over and begin.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you to all of the commissioners for the invitation to be here this evening. It's my pleasure. It's always great to hear a little bit about what's going on in our neighboring community to the north. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to share my screen now, if that's all right, and dive into this brief presentation regarding climate action KC. When I was elected mayor of Roland Park, one of the things I knew that I wanted to do was to work within the bonds of neighborly opportunity that we have in the greater Kansas City metropolitan region, and found some like-minded governing body officials throughout the region to work together on issues of the day as it relates to climate and the environment, which really, when you put the Venn diagrams together, touches so much of what we are tasked with doing as elected officials, including our financial responsibility to our constituents. So we formed Climate Action KC, previously known as the Metropolitan Kansas City Climate Action Coalition, to be an organization that invites not only elected officials, but business and community leaders together with the idea of drawing down greenhouse gases, but also promoting the co-benefits of the good things that come along with reducing carbon emissions and methane emissions, including, but not limited to, financial prosperity, public health, and general quality of life. Here on the slide is some of the leaders that have been working through one of our 6 committees in the last year and a half since we've started. In addition to various elected officials, we have corporate partners and nonprofit partners, some of which are seen here, because we believe that to promote the solutions that we're looking to promote, we want participation throughout the community. And we're very proud to have a robust big tent organization to have various viewpoints represented, corporate, nonprofit, education, and government. So in working to promote regional activity, we wanted to first bring attention to the things that municipalities and counties could do on their own volition, things that they could do without any needed authority from either the federal or the state government. So what we did was work to gather resources with subject matter experts, but as well as talking to other communities throughout the country, primarily throughout the Midwest, to put together what we have called a playbook. And what the playbook does is highlights 65 different solutions in categories from land use to planning to energy to buildings and cities, giving specific solutions categorized in 6 very general categories which was framed after a book called Project Drawdown by Paul Hawken. Side note, what's really interesting about that book is that it talks about 80 different solutions. And I apologize for the background noise here. The great thing about some of these virtual meetings. And within these categories, given 80 solutions brought to scale, that they could draw down the amount of carbon in the atmosphere to 1950s levels while saving $3 trillion. So in our playbook, we categorize these different solutions into sector, the kind of solution, what kind of action it would require from the government, whether it be leading by example in municipal projects, encouraging action through incentives, or enacting policy. Each section has an action, some potential methods and specific examples from communities, many of which are within the Kansas City metro area, as well as additional resources to help cities avoid potholes and implement these solutions expeditiously. A small example of what some of the cities who are partners with us have been doing are included here, whether it be LEED Platinum building pilots or a solar ready ordinance or watershed strategies. There's a number of different solutions within that playbook, which you can find on our website, which is climateactionkc.com. And I'm happy to send that information and some actual tangible playbooks to you commissioners for your reference. We realized, though, that as much as we could do within our individual municipalities or counties to make real meaningful action and move the needle for all 2 million plus residents in the metro area, we were going to have to work together. Being a mayor of a city of about 7,000, I realized that I rely so much on the partnership of others for things like trash or recycling services, for water, for energy. So to really have an impact on those things, transboundary issues like energy, transportation, or food, we realized we're going to have to work together. And we wanted to get a baseline of where we were as a region so that we could set goals and work towards those. And we found a partner in the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is an organization that started in New York, but is now worldwide, to where one of every 10 people in the world lives within a city that's a member of this Global Covenant of Mayors. And we pitched them on a pilot project that would take a regional approach to climate action planning, a 9-county approach, a bi-state approach. And along with the Kansas City metro region, we worked with Washington, D.C., Chicagoland, and then metropolitan Denver to create an emissions inventory for these regions, as well as a climate risk and vulnerability assessment to then inform an actual plan of action. So the goal we had initially penciled in was a 27% reduction in 2005 levels by 2025. That would put us in line with the requirements of the Paris Climate Accord, but also have some real tangible benefits in a reasonable timeline. We thought a lot of people like to set goals out in 2050, but we wanted to be held accountable in the near term to keep the deadline fresh. So with a partner and the technical assistance of an engineering firm that was hired by the Global Covenant called Burrow Happold, we worked with all major utilities in town to create this emissions inventory. And you can see here generally the categories that came out of that inventory. Obviously the biggest emissions sectors are on-road transportation and the building industry, whether it be commercial or residential. Together, buildings accounted for about 63% of emissions. So we realized that would be the biggest opportunity that we could have to move the needle in the near future for the Kansas City metro region. As you can see in this chart, we'd have to significantly reduce greenhouse emissions to achieve an 80% reduction by 2050, which is the goal that a lot of people like to throw out as possible. But without some changes, we have a long way to go if we keep on track with the business as usual approach. Additionally, we did a climate risk and vulnerability assessment looking at what factors or what impacts of a climate the Kansas City residents are most vulnerable to. It is no surprise that the most vulnerable populations in a region are disproportionately affected by a changing climate, and also most vulnerable to the risks. One interesting study that we like to point to was called the Climate Disruption Index. It was created, I believe, in 2018 by a group of climate scientists that ranked all of the different metropolitan regions across the country. And in doing so, ranked them based on how much they were prone to be affected by a changing climate. One would think that coastal cities would be top of that list, but lo and behold, Kansas City as a region was ranked number 5 as a metro area throughout the entire country. And this is one of the reasons why. When you look at the risk matrix, we have a high probability of things of high magnitude and high consequence, such as drought, increased heat degree days, flooding, as well as natural disasters, and then increased rainfall and flooding. So things that we need to be aware of as we prepare for things like infrastructure, reinvestment within our building stock, reinvestment within our streets and our sidewalks, that we be aware of the changes coming to the climate so that we can adapt. One of the other parts of the study was a social vulnerability index. And again, no surprise that the vulnerability indicators that we saw through the study were those of already vulnerable populations, those with less education, those who were non-white, who had lower socioeconomic status, as well as the elderly population or those living alone, as well as those uninsured or unemployed. This is the heat vulnerability impact index. Again, similar socioeconomic indicators that indicate heat vulnerability. And here's just a little more granular detail that we have available. The study of which we've released an executive summary. When all the data is in a presentable format, I look forward to sharing the specific granular detail of Wyandotte County with the commission. Once we were done with that inventory and risk assessment, we brought together as many Kansas City residents as we could to discuss what priorities we have as a region moving forward. While we had planned and were excited to have 500 registrants for an event at Bartle Hall, lo and behold, COVID hit. So we moved and pivoted our entire outreach online to a website called Mind Mixer. It's a project of BNIM's architecture firm and then Google's Sidewalk program. And we still heard from several hundred Kansas City Metro residents on what strategies were priorities for them. And one of them, one that you've discussed this evening already, complete streets and green streets. Some of the stakeholder comments were for things like e-bikes, walkable, rideable, 15-minute communities, less dependence upon individual cars, but on public transportations or walkability. So for the study and for the climate action plan, our next steps, we're in the process of plan development now. We are very deeply thankful and in the debt of the Mid-America Regional Council for a lot of the work that they put in on this. Mark does some amazing things, and a lot of the categories in which they have been working for decades now are categories that have influenced and helped shape this climate action plan. So their transportation plan, their air quality focus, as well as their green infrastructure plan and playbook, all of which helps to shape this plan that we are excited to launch at the end of the year. And then from there, we're excited to work with our community and corporate partners to help the actual implementation of some of these strategies. One of the things that we're going to be launching next year is a regional building and energy exchange to help reduce that 63% of emissions coming from our building sector. We are excited to work with not only nonprofit partners, but the robust design community, the architects and engineers and general contractors that form such a backbone of the Kansas City economy, as well as with the chambers of commerce, to help make some of these solutions more readily available, to increase education to our building community about the co-benefits of building weather-resistant, energy-efficient buildings, and also to empower local governments with not only knowledge, but also collective opportunities for partnerships and procurement of some of these technologies, so that we might work together to be more efficient, to save fiscal resources in implementing some of these things, because there's really great opportunities in partnership. Along with some of these more meat and potato things, we have committees working, focusing on education and outreach, a committee focused on the youth. Generation Z is so in tune with this issue. You've seen great support from folks in the high school and college level. We're excited to have a committee working with them to bring an opportunity for them to voice their concerns to their elected officials. We have a committee working on public policy. We'll have a policy platform for both Kansas and Missouri. We have a committee focused on a summit. Back in 2019, we were able to bring together 750 folks at Johnson County Community College. We had planned to do the same this year, but again, the pandemic. But we're looking forward to an event in 2021 and are excited about that. We also have a committee focused on equity. Again, understanding the unique, unfortunately, all too common, but not unique problem of vulnerable communities being vulnerable to a changing climate. So we want to empower communities with education and opportunities therein. And then committees focused on continued education and working with policymakers in the metro region, working with Mark, working with the Johnson and Wyandotte County Council of Mayors, as well as the Jackson County Council. So I appreciate the opportunity to share just a little bit and to throw a lot of information at you. And I apologize that I can get very excited about this, but I think it's just a really great opportunity for our region to take advantage of things like Kansas wind power, energy efficiency, and making our buildings energy efficient saves our taxpayers money. It provides a good leadership role by example, and really can help reduce emissions, which has so many benefits for our community, not the least of which is doing our part in the global challenge. So with that, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here and present. I'm happy to answer questions now, and also I'm happy to answer questions later should they arise, and invite all of you to join us on various committees or for educational opportunities to bring some of these solutions back to Wyandotte County. So thank you all very much for your time and for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much, Mayor Kelly, for your presentation. I have one question. It's kind of a strange question, but actually you made me think of it. And when you were mentioning COVID and going back to your data about buildings and transportation being, you know, the biggest producers of air quality concerns, you know, there's been all these stories about air quality improvements as a result of COVID. Is there any thought from your committee about sort of promoting the idea of continuing to have work from home for some employees, and how that, I mean, it's sort of a catch-22 for a government. If people reduce their office space, that may not be what we want, but if they have people coming in maybe only half the days of the week, that could continue to have improvements to air quality.
Absolutely. It can have an impact on our carbon emissions and our air quality. And I think we've seen that Zoom or GoToMeeting or WebEx have all received a big trial by fire here, but it's one of the silver linings, hopefully, that we can bring from this pandemic is proof of concept for a change in habits that can have a positive impact, not only economically, saving the cost and the opportunity cost time for a commute, but also from an air quality standpoint, it can have an impact. So as much as the pandemic has challenged us all, we hope that maybe one of the silver linings we can take out of this whole process is a recognition that change is possible, that sometimes we have to take a different lens when we're looking at a problem, but also the necessity of community action and preparedness. And so we're excited about hopefully promoting some things like this that the pandemic have shown is possible. And, you know, I understand the concern also about commercial real estate and people maybe not wanting to take as much space, but at the same time, an opportunity for smart growth and density also then exists. So I would be continuing to take a different lens on the problem. But you're absolutely right, Commissioner.
Other questions for Mayor Kelly?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thank you, Mayor Kelly, for coming and giving the presentation. And also, Commissioner Markley, thank you for letting me invite Mayor Kelly. Unfortunately, his counterpart, I call her, Shawnee Councilwoman Constance, wasn't able to be here tonight. So I thank you, Mayor Kelly, for coming in and accepting the invitation. I wanted Climate Action KC to come before us because I've noticed that climate change and sustainability really hasn't been part of our conversation until recently. You know, when COVID came about is when we really started looking at how our government and how we do things could be more green, more sustainable. And so I'm happy that we are starting that, and I hope that we continue that because it's very important. One of the things that I hope to do recently, the city of Lenexa, they voted on the resolution accepting the playbook as possibilities of ways that they can improve their city and be more sustainable. They carefully chose the word accept instead of adopt so that they would be able to take the playbook and use it, but also make sure that it fits with what the city's trying to do and within the means of that city. And so that is something I would like to do for Wyandotte. I am working with Mayor Alvey on that, and he's going to be working on with the Council of Mayors to get their perspective so that we can have a more regional approach with Edwardsville and Bonner. But I'm excited that this is happening. And so I thank you, Mayor Kelly, for coming and being a part of this and starting this. I've only recently been part of Climate Action KC, and so I hope to continue to be involved, and I hope that Wyandotte, that we continue having these conversations and take big steps in ensuring our environment is sustainable and green and beautiful. So thank you.
Well, Commissioner, thank you so much, not only for your participation in CAKC's efforts, but for the invitation to be here today. And let me make one suggestion for Wyandotte County in terms of looking at the playbook. One of the things you might do is to take a look at the playbook and use it as a checklist, and you will be surprised that a lot of the good things that you are already doing for your community, you'll be able to tick off and recognize as things that are listed in the playbook. The playbook is not a one size fits all. Consider it an a la carte menu of things that make sense for a municipality. But you'll see that some of the good actions that Wyandotte has already taken for their own accord have an impact on the environment in a positive way that also then have an impact on carbon emissions. We've really tried to focus on the positive and the co-benefits of these actions, about the cost savings, in highlighting solutions and in choosing our tone. And so we feel like that's something that everybody can get behind. We're a bipartisan and nonpartisan organization, folks from all different spectrums and, as part of the team, because it just makes sense. I'll leave you with one more from a financial argument. When we were in Washington, D.C., we had the opportunity to meet with the House Select Committee on the climate crisis and provide some testimony there. One of the groups that was there at the same time was Moody's. Moody's had just bought a controlling stake in a climate and data analytics firm called 427. And that firm mapped the county and a municipality's ability to recover from natural disaster. How climate resilient was your infrastructure and your policies? That leads us directly to believe that a region on these matters and their intent behind it is potentially going to have direct impact on their bond rating. So not only is it a good thing to do, it's a proactive measure for the future. So thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Commissioner Philbrook, did you have a question?
I have a statement. So I do appreciate the mayor coming and speaking with us, and I can tell he's very passionate about this subject, and it carries through, and thank you so very much. I do know that we the UG have been working on some green things over the years and have slowly started to adopt these things. So it didn't start happening just recently. And that we're very bad at tooting our horn about the good things that we do for our community. Just like a lot of hierarchy doesn't talk about everything they've done. They just do it and they just keep working. So I would say that yes, you're right. I think that if we ticked off of your checklist, that we would see a whole bunch of stuff that we have done. I am really excited to hear that you do that climate action case.
Might have lost Commissioner Philbrook there for a minute. Well, oh, We lost you there for a minute, Commissioner Philbrook.
Uh-oh, well, so, whoops, I'm unstable again. I'm just unstable. And be careful how you quote that. Mayor Kelly.
Commissioner, I want to catch it with the 10-foot pole, but
But thank you.
You're absolutely right. Wyandotte County has done some amazing things, one of which I'll mention. BPU, just about the cleanest fuel mixture of any of the utilities in town, 40% by renewables. That's one of the best in the country. You guys can absolutely toot your horn on that. And we think there's some absolutely great things going on in Wyandotte County, and we're excited to align with them.
And our lighting, going to the LD. I mean, so yes, so we things, but yes, I think there's always more things we can do. And thanks for bringing that playbook in front of us.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, any other questions from the commission? Pull up my little screen here. I don't see any hands. Well, thank you again, both to Commissioner Ramirez for bringing this item forward and to Mayor Kelly for spending time with us tonight. We really appreciate it. That item is for information only. Thanks so much. All right. Item number 2 is about influenza reporting. And Julianne Van Loo is here to speak with us tonight. Julianne?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, but at least for me, it's small.
Try a new share.
Yeah, a little jumbled.
Well, I'll keep working on that, but I'm just going to start in the meantime as my computer tries to catch up here. I'm going to be quick tonight on this item. We are coming to you requesting an ordinance requiring that our healthcare providers and our laboratories in Wyandotte County are being required to report influenza cases. So if you're not familiar, the state health department, and this is standard across the country, state health departments set what are called reportable conditions or reportable diseases. And they have done that. They have a very long list, and those cover the gamut: measles, tuberculosis, polio, those sorts of things. Right now, the state health department does not include laboratory confirmed cases of influenza on their list of reportable conditions, unless it's an influenza death of a child or a novel influenza virus. And this is likely because that would be a massive amount of work for them. They would have to receive these reports from all over the state, and that would be difficult for them to do. But at the county level, it makes a really big difference. So unfortunately, at this time, we at the county level do not receive accurate reporting of influenza in our county. Again, that's because it's not a required reportable condition to the state health department. So that really is a problem for our ability to appropriately track influenza, and this season, of course, to understand the difference between flu and COVID in our community and understand its spread and how it's affecting our population. So this ordinance that we're bringing forward this evening would require that laboratory confirmed cases of influenza be reported to our local health department within 7 calendar days. So typically, reportable conditions in the state of Kansas have to be reported within 4 hours, COVID-19 being among them. We are not looking to make a stringent, very difficult ordinance for our healthcare partners and our laboratories to comply with. This is really about surveillance and population-wide understanding of disease spread. So that being said, it would be reportable within 7 calendar days. You can see here who would be required reporters, basically anybody who's working in healthcare, physician's assistant, nurse, but also laboratories and health clinics and the like. Just to give you a quick understanding, we won't be requiring patient level protected health information. Rather, we'll be asking for the date of diagnosis, how old they are, test results, race and ethnicity, but not name, no identifying address of that individual, only the zip code, again, so that we can understand what this looks like at a population level. I just want everyone to understand we're not collecting additional PHI or protected health information. We're really going for population level surveillance. And so if passed this evening and then through the commission, what we would do is mail out notification to all of our healthcare providers in the county and laboratories. We would also push out through all of our various networks that we have, the Kansas Association of Pediatrics, the many healthcare related folks that we know and work with routinely to make sure that they all know about this change. And again, the reporting to us would be very basic. It would be in a spreadsheet format, sent via fax or secure encrypted email. And then we've already been doing this. We routinely publish weekly cases of influenza. But again, in recent years, our data has not been entirely accurate, again, because it's not a reportable condition. So pretty straightforward. This is something that a lot of states and other counties around the country do require. Ours does not. And so this will, again, give us the ability to have a much better flu surveillance program in our county. And that's all I have on that.
Commissioners, questions for Julianne?
I have one, and I'm trying to remember where exactly in your, how many counties in the state of Kansas have this requirement? Do you know, Julianne?
I don't know. I looked for that. There's nobody that seems to be tracking it. So it's similar in Missouri that it's not state required. The Kansas City, Missouri Health Department did this a couple of years ago because they were running into the same issue. So I believe more counties and cities are starting to do it, but I'm sorry, I can't tell you that this evening.
Okay, no problem. Do you, you just said you probably did. Do any city or Johnson County have this?
I don't believe so. Again, I can't say definitively. They would have had to do it in an ordinance at the local level, but I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
But I want to make sure people understand that this isn't a burdensome thing that we're asking for. This routine reporting is what they do every single day in healthcare. And again, we're giving them a 7-day window rather than that 4 hours to make sure that they have the time that they need to give us the information.
I will say, Julianne, I Googled the list of state reportable conditions just for my own curiosity. And it's an extensive list. So certainly medical providers are used to providing information on these reportable conditions. And this just happens to be one that, as of right now, they only have to report, deaths of children due to influenza. But it's a big, long list of conditions, everything from the chicken pox to HIV to just a huge list. So it was interesting learning experience for me.
I'm so glad. That's awesome.
Other questions?
Commissioner Merkley, it's Commissioner Bynum. I'd like to make a motion to approve it.
Great.
Commissioner Philbrook, second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Can I have roll call?
Before we take roll call, we want to make note that it is requested that this item be fast-tracked to the November 5th, 2024 commission meeting. Roll call, Philbrook.
Aye.
Matt Kane.
Aye.
Aye.
Ramirez. Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you. And thank you, Julianne. Item number 3, what was previously item number 3 on our agenda, was that item banning the sale of flavored tobacco products, and that has been deleted from tonight's agenda. So if you are from the public and you are waiting to hear that item has been removed. Item number 4, tobacco sales to those under 21 remains on our agenda tonight, and that is next up for discussion. I believe Julianne is presenting that item as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And again, my computer's a little delayed. Can you see the small screen of this PowerPoint? Okay, I apologize. It'll respond here shortly. So we are coming before you this evening to ask that we make a small amendment to our existing Tobacco 21 ordinance. Several of you were here at the time, but if you'll recall, 5 years ago, you all passed a T21 ordinance, and what this did is it raised the age of being able to purchase tobacco from 18 to 21. And we did this, you all did this, which was incredible and really out in front and ahead of a lot of other folks, because 95% of smokers nationally start before the age of 21. And so if you can delay smoking initiation or delay vaping, any sort of tobacco use, that can oftentimes mean preventing lifelong tobacco use. So as I mentioned, Wyandotte County was really out front on this, which was fantastic, but now we're 5 years in and there's a whole new body of research and evidence to show that T21 can certainly work, but there's a good way to do T21 and there's an even better way. And so we're bringing forward to you this evening a small change to make our existing ordinance even stronger. And now I'm going to pass to Bianca Garcia, who is our tobacco expert within the health department, to explain this change to you.
Thank you so much, Julianne. So as Julianne mentioned, it's been about 5 years since we passed a Tobacco 21 ordinance in our community. And we've learned so much since then. And there are some key things that we've learned about model policy. So a big one is around PUP, which is purchase, use, and possession by underage persons. So model policy suggests removal of PUP language from T21 ordinances. And when we passed our ordinance in 2015, it did include this language. And like Julianne mentioned, there has been research that has come out since then, and we've realized that PUP laws really are putting the punishment on youth. And oftentimes these youth, they are addicted, and that is due to aggressive marketing by the tobacco industry that led to initiation at an early age. And so rather than punish them for their addiction, we're not offering some other resources in exchange. And so PUP, what we've learned is inappropriately shifting the blame from the tobacco industry or retailers to the users. We've also learned it's not an effective approach to reducing youth tobacco use. It's really detracting from more effective enforcement measures and tobacco control efforts. And along with that, it could deter cessation. So those youth who are addicted may find it difficult to quit and not know really where they can get the support to stop smoking. And putting the punishment on them could really even deter that cessation even further. Next slide, Julianne. So what we've learned is a better approach is really implementing cessation intervention strategies that prove to be much more beneficial. So with this Tobacco 21 amendment, what we're proposing is removing the PUP language from our Tobacco 21 ordinance that was passed in 2015. We also know that the violation should go on the tobacco retailer versus the cashier. We know it's more equitable to place this on the responsibility of the license holder. Also, the tobacco retailer is the one who should be educating employers or employees on the proper practice, along with holding them to a higher level of compliance. And we don't want the punishment to be on the user for the reasons I mentioned on the earlier slide. So I mentioned that a better approach would be offering some cessation intervention strategies. And in Kansas, we do have an adult quit line that's dedicated to those 18 or older to help them really guide them through a quit journey. As of January of this year, we implemented a new youth cessation quit line called My Life, My Quit. And so this one's focused on youth specifically, those under the age of 18 who need help quitting vaping, tobacco. And so it's a text-based service where they get free confidential assistance through a coach who has been trained on how to work with youth specifically. They don't ever have to speak to this person over the phone. So we know that this is much more adapted to the type of population that they're working with. Along with that, locally, I do a lot of work with Vibrant Clinic, who really represents the population of those most susceptible to tobacco use. And we focused for a long time on adult cessation. And so youth cessation is something that we're really focusing on this year to provide more resources, work with the providers, the provider team to implement different strategies based off best practice that focus on addressing that issue, addressing the needs of tobacco users versus punishing the user for addiction. So these are some ways that we know will really help the issue versus what PUP law could create in our community. So that is all we have. Thank you so much for your time. Are there any questions?
So Bianca, back in the olden days when we had, when the law was under 18, did that law have the PUP provisions in it? Or do you know? I guess I'm just curious.
I'm not sure. I believe it did. I think this is something that just as of Tobacco 21 has come into effect and has become the best practice. We've realized that PUP is more of an issue. So prior to raising the age, I believe PUP language was still part of that language.
Commissioner, this is question. James, were you going to answer my question?
Oh, yeah, I was going to answer your question. Yes, I was going to answer that. So when it was 18, yes, possession of cigarettes was what was illegal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kane.
Thank you. Clarification. I didn't pass it. I think that you guys are overstepping your bounds. I said that in 2015. I'm saying it now. If you're 18 years old and you can serve our country and you can die for our country, what we're doing is wrong. I disagreed with it then. I disagree with it now. And that flavored tobacco, when that comes up, I think I'll line up some people to show you folks how they don't like it. And our job is to do what our constituents ask us to do, not what our, well, instead of getting mad, I disagree with you.
Other questions from commissioners? Let's see any hands. If there are no more questions from commissioners, Clerk, I believe we had a couple of folks who were prepared to speak on this item tonight from the public.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. We have 2.
If you would bring up the first one, and we'll find them in the participant list and promote them.
Absolutely. We have Jenny Chadwick that is in support.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can turn my camera on or not, but if not, no big deal. Thank you guys so much for having me. I too am sad that I can't be there in person. I stood before you 5 years ago as a former council person in Columbia, Missouri, who had passed Tobacco 21 here and asked you in Kansas City to pass this ordinance there. And as you've heard, we've learned a lot about Tobacco 21 since then. I helped communities across the country pass and even worked at the federal level to move the age to 21. And we did learn a lot in that process. And we know how important it is for the penalty to go on the retailer who's addicting our kids to a deadly substance and providing cessation support for our kids. I'm also a co-author on a document called the Tobacco Control Enforcement for Racial Equity. We know, unfortunately, that purchase, use, and possession laws get put on our minority population more often, and that we also don't believe that the law should be criminal. And so this ordinance that's before you will change the penalty structure to a civil structure and put the penalty on the retailer. And I encourage you to make these amendments to make your ordinance strong and follow what we've seen across the country as communities adopted it, because you guys were one of the leaders in the nation. And for the Midwest to lead on this was very positive, but we want to keep leading and keep having strong laws. And so I encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Clerk, I think we had one more, right?
Yes, we have Misty Slater that is in support, and she's with the American Heart Association.
Hello, I am Misty Slater. I am coming to you on behalf of American Heart Association Kansas City in support of this ordinance, making changes to the sale of tobacco products to any person under 21. In working with partners all across the county and the metro over about the last year to address tobacco use policy, what we realized was these criminal offenses for young people in the county to buy tobacco, and that even could potentially lead to criminal records for those young people. And we feel very strongly that this is the right time to fix that. Laws prohibiting the possession and the use and the purchase of tobacco products by minors, as I believe Bianca said, PUP laws, we now know that they're not effective deterrents for youth smoking. And oftentimes they're not enforced equitably across the entire community or across the entire state. So while advocates for these PUP laws really hoped that they could be a part of this multifaceted approach to reduce youth smoking rates, what we have found through studies over the last few years is that there is little evidence that they are actually having a deterrent effect for youth smoking. And PUP laws are oftentimes inequitable because they disproportionately affect youth of color, as well as low-income communities and neighborhoods. Youth of color, as well as LGBT youth, youth with disabilities, and boys are oftentimes more likely to smoke because these populations have really been targeted by tobacco industry messaging and oftentimes even have more access to the shops that sell tobacco products in their neighborhoods. So these proposed changes that are in front of you tonight are really in alignment with best practices from across the country that make tobacco laws easier to enforce.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. It's easier and more effective to conduct compliance checks on retailers because there are fewer of them and they are known and constant as compared to youth who are addicted to nicotine who move all about the city. So by amending the community's PUP laws, you are taking a really important step to stay on the leading edge to address health equity and nicotine addiction in our city. And I stand prepared to work with all of you, as well as our community partners from across the city and across the metro as we continue to improve health and equity. And I ask that you all support this ordinance refining those penalties. Thank you so very much for allowing me to speak tonight.
All right. Thank you very much. Commissioners, are there additional questions or comments? If not, this item is for action.
This is Commissioner Philbrook. I move that we move this forward for full commission conversation.
Ramirez, second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Philbrook.
Aye.
Kane.
No.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye. Thank you very much. We have just one more item on our agenda, team, and it is regarding CARES Act funding. Crystal is here to present to us this evening, and I believe Wilba is here also to present the CDBG portion of this item.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Markley. And yes, Wilba is here with us and will join us at the conclusion of this presentation. Just want to share my screen. Commissioner Markley, can you see the CARES Act presentation? All right, well, let's get started. Good evening. Thank you so much to the Chair Markley and also to the rest of the committee for bringing us back tonight to allow us to give you an update on the CARES Act funding. This item is for information only, and we'll be presenting some information about phase 1, phase 2, and community block grant development funding through the CARES Act. For our audience that's joining us tonight, I want to provide a little context as to why we are here having this conversation. As a reminder, the Governor's Office of Recovery was tasked with distributing CARES Act dollars that were awarded from the federal government to the local states. Wyandotte County received an allotment of $37 million in phase 1 funding. The mayor appointed a planning committee to plan for and prioritize distribution of the allocation. And the planning committee chaired by Commissioner Markley, in addition to Commissioner Bynum and Commissioner Philbrook, with the city manager, Mike Webb of Edwardsville, Matt Zayas from Bonner Springs, Maureen Mahoney from the mayor's office, our chief financial officer, Kathleen Von Etchen, assistant county administrator, Alan Howes, and the director of our public health department, Julianne Van Loo, all sat on that committee and laid out the priority fundings that are here before you. That's the basis to our update today and how we got started in the CARES Act 1 funding distribution. As a point of reference, the CARES Act round 1 funding distribution from the Recovery Office was divided into 3 major categories. The first being direct aid plans. These were awarded to 501c3s, medical response community agencies, and educational agencies. We also had direct transfers to school districts and educational institutions, as well as to the city of Edwardsville and the city of Bonner, and county and city reimbursement and direct aid plans. This included our public health department, grants to the economic development department and to UG departments for preparedness, response, and recovery from the COVID pandemic. We want to give you a few updates, just give you some highlights of how these dollars are being put to work inside our community. We want to give you first examples of how the unified government is accomplishing recovery and response, as well as preparing for whatever is around the corner in the COVID response need next for our community. I'm going to start by highlighting just 3 of the series of programs and response efforts throughout the organization here at the Unified Government. And I'm going to start by highlighting the citizens communication. The Communications Department used CARES Act funding to play a critical role in the communications team ability to provide Wyandotte Countyans with important COVID-19 information, education, and update. CARES Act dollars and funding has been used to bolster the team's activity by publishing 3 12-page editions of the Citizen newsletter. That newsletter reaches 68,000 addresses in Wyandotte County. They also used CARES Act dollars to publish 4 double-sided direct mailers sent to those same addresses that contained latest information about COVID-19, CARES Act information, which included testing availability, contact tracing, and local health officer guidance. The communications team was able to publish monthly postcards around the radius of pop-up testing locations to keep residents in those areas informed as to the locations and availability of testing. And these dollars also allowed the production of material both in English and Spanish, which has been a priority in our communications to citizens. To promote mask wearing and testing, commercials have been produced and air on local television, radio, print, and digital mediums. These include the creation of 2 television commercials with 15-second and 30-second variations in both English and Spanish. And the commercials will continue to run in our area, have started running in September and will continue to run and remain on air through January of 2021. And lastly, and maybe quite important to this group, and our community as a whole, this funding has allowed the communications team to fund productions of African American and Latinx specific commercials proposed by the Health Department's Health Equity Task Force. This is important because both these populations have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, and the commercials are being finalized now and will enter the existing advertisement rotation as soon as they're finalized. Just a little idea of what the communications, how the communications team has been able to use their CARES Act allocations to promote information exchange to citizens. Other areas that we would highlight today are the continuation of government services through an exhausting effort amongst the interdepartment efforts. We were able to purchase technology to ensure that government can continue no matter whether that be at home because of a stay-at-home order or some isolation, but also to operate not in an emergency capacity, but also fully respond to citizens' needs in a remote capacity. We were able to leverage bulk purchases for the entire UG at a cost savings with our provider, and this included the purchase of laptops, cameras, and other equipment to ensure that critical functions such as courts, clerks, the finance department, the planning department can continue to fully operate while abiding by any of those health orders, social distancing, and provide citizens access to our services who themselves are practicing social distancing or under stay-at-home orders. The purchases have been made, received, and inventoried, and we're preparing to distribute them now to the departments. We would also mention that the Emergency Management Department has been able to make bulk purchases of PPE, as well as replace stores that were depleted in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. Furthering the local jurisdictional response, and what was included in the city-county distribution was an allocation to our Economic Development Department for direct grants to small businesses. And these businesses were asked to apply for and provide information regarding their impact because of stay-at-home orders, because of lost revenue, or because of mitigation efforts that those small businesses had to do. The small business grants went through an application process similar to the 501c3s and medical institutions. We used the current structure in the Economic Development Department to ensure that we had the most adequate grant process and selection process for the small businesses. We were able to release 825 or planning to release $825,000 into the local community for small business aid. Director Carter's team, led by Shea Lockett in the small business area of the Economic Development Department, has developed, created, advertised, ranked, allocated, and registered these dollars or these grant recipients in less than 45 days, which is just absolutely astounding for that department to be able to shelter and handle that level of interest in our community. We were able to replicate the application process that was digitized so that we could move this process quickly and efficiently for our small businesses. The Economic Development Department received 113 applications for businesses here locally that have less than 25 employees and 20 applications for businesses that had 25 or more employees. We are happy to say that the distribution process is to begin within the next 2 weeks. The Economic Development team will be bringing additional information about these awards and their impact in the small business area of our county at additional and future updates. Another area of funding set forth by the Planning Committee and also approved by the full commission was a community response. Over $9 million of our award here at Wyandotte County was issued back into the community to subrecipients that included those medical, educational, and human service agencies. Local schools, colleges, daycares, preschools, small to large 501c3s who fund food efforts, rent and utility assistance, and job training in our community were funded through these dollars. Medical sources for many in the community, which is which are vital partners to our local health department, were also funded here. We know that it is important and critical that we keep information flowing regarding the experience of our subrecipients. We've used this extraordinary process as a testing ground for digitizing processes within the UG. This will be continued during the final phases of the CARES Act distribution, highlighted here, which will be the reporting period. The final phase, which is reporting, it will be taken seriously by the CARES Act team. We take the directives of the governor's office, the trust of this governing body, very seriously when we act upon our responsibilities to monitor for only eligible uses of CARES Act dollars. Our reporting period for our subrecipients begins just in a week or so, and then is followed by 2 subsequent reports. A little bit more information about our subrecipient process. To support our subrecipients, our team will be offering interactive trainings beginning tomorrow for all of our community partners. We want to make sure that they're set up to be as successful as they possibly can. For agencies receiving less than $20,000, the milestones and meeting those milestones drive the distribution process of the remaining dollars. To meet those milestones, agencies must submit required reporting and have used significant portions of their prior financial release. Lastly, to better inform citizens about the agencies that have received CARES Act dollars through Phase 1 funding, we're in the development of a resource list that will be in publication in various platforms, including sharing amongst the community recipients so that they might be able to better and wholly assist the individuals that come in to their offices for help during this time. As the public health response continues to require flexibility, our public health department is utilizing the $10 million allocation to respond and recover to ever-changing environment that COVID-19 has presented them. They use their CARES Act dollars to meet the needs of the community with testing, contact tracing, and preparation for vital vaccinations. We do, however, want to inform this group tonight that unfortunately we must make an adjustment to the scope of one of the products or one of the programs that the health department had budgeted for previously. The health department had submitted the WICO Connect program as a brand new program implemented with cooperation amongst the health department, United Way, and the Community Health Council of Wyandotte County. This project was seen as vital to our future efforts in mitigation for COVID-19, but also provided wraparound services for job training, housing, utility assistance, and case management. The project was really important to our health department professionals, but due to the constraints of the CARES Act 1 funding, it was a heart-heavy decision to decide that redirection of these fundings was the only eligible option. Barriers included the time constraints of the current phase 1 funding, which required that the program be wrapped up by December 30th. There's also an ever-changing and flexible need within our community, and I think we're seeing that with remote testing locations set at 78th and State, and just the sheer sustainability of the program with such a short funding cycle. So the health department is weighing their options as to the redistribution of these dollars for the public health response. The proposals that could potentially come back to this group are reimbursement increases for qualifying payroll, increased needs at testing sites set up, and increased need for health department contract staffing. Again, this was an important program that the health department felt could make a lasting change in our community when it came to public health response. But unfortunately, the reality hit that was 75 days to go. It was not sufficient to be able to set this program up with any kind of sustainability. And I am excited at the end of this, our presentation of the CARES Act 1 and 2 funding, that WILBA will be presenting some options that we have vetted out for you. I want to provide an update on the phase 2 funding, the Connectivity Emergency Response Grant. We placed an application, as we told this group some 45 days ago, with the Department of Commerce to increase and expand fiber access for education, public safety, and economic development to the underserved areas of our community and our county. That would be in cooperation with Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, and USD 204. The Department of Commerce notified the unified government that we were selected for this project at our request of $2.8 million to extend that high-speed connectivity to those parts of the county. The fiber connectivity phase 2 team is working through the award requirements and developing guidance as it continues to develop from the federal departments and the Department of Commerce. So there'll be more to come on this particular phase 2 update. I always like to give you guys some timeline perspective. It's been 122 days since Wyandotte County presented their applications and released the application for subrecipients to apply for funding. It's been 99 days since Wyandotte County's applications were due back in for our subrecipients. It's only been 77 days since the commission approval of the Wyandotte County CARES Act funding plan resolution, and only 49 days since the Recovery Office approved and released funding. We have 65 days left to go with CARES Act Round 1 funding. So I'm happy to report that we are expended at a rate or have contributed community resources at 50% of our award, and we're excited to get some more of those dollars out into the community so that our community can continue to respond and recover to the COVID-19 pandemic. With that type of timeline, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the team that has been assembled and has continued to work over those last days, all the way from our executive sponsor, Mr. House, to our communications contributor, Dave Reno, Desiree Bush from the finance department, Lisa Rangel from administration, James Bain from legal, Robbie Anderson from public works, who focuses on our metrics, and also the exterior components to our team. We could not have gotten this far, and we will not finish without the support from other agencies throughout our organization. In 50 days, these offices have processed a massive amount of procurement bids, payments, allocations, vendor registration. The DOTS team has received well over 200 pieces of technology, and all that protective measures that departments have been purchasing or we've been purchasing for the health department, those things all have to be installed. So the building logistics team has really been right there with us. So yet another type of CARES Act dollars have been the community development block grant dollars. And at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Wilba Miller, who will present some information about those CDBG dollars.
This is Wilbeth. Can everybody hear me?
Yep. Welcome, Wilbeth.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Crystal. Well, as you all know, we got our first round of, we were notified of our first round of allocations earlier this year. We brought forward a substantial amendment to the commission for the first round, which was $1.3 million, and submitted it to HUD for a substantial amendment to our regular annual plan. We have received a second allocation of funds from HUD in the amount of $788,142 for a grand total of $2,143,980. As you can see on the slides, the funds can be used for all eligible CDBG activities, but also must be used to prepare, prevent, and respond to the COVID-19 health crisis and economic impacts. And the nice thing about these funds, they have a 6-year performance period, but 80% of them, or 1.7 million of these funds, must be spent in the first 3 years. The requirements include meeting the regular CDBG objectives that we have, which are to be used for predominantly to benefit low and moderate income households, which are people who make less than 80% of the area median income. The CDBG allows for many of these eligible activities, but based on the current community impacts of COVID and consultation with Crystal Sprague and Julianne Van Loo, we have identified a handful of activities that have the potential to make the greatest impact. We are looking to fund the following. Next slide, please. Rent mortgage assistance. These funds can be used to provide emergency payments of rent or mortgage for up to 6 months for income qualified households. Some of the UG CARES funds have been allocated for this purpose and would probably need to be spent first. Eviction prevention is important in preventing the spread of COVID-19 by decreasing the likelihood that a family will double up with another household or have to enter a congregate shelter or even shelter on the streets with limited access to hygiene. We will utilize a subrecipient to administer this program, and a portion of our CD admin dollars will be used to cover staff time in overseeing these subrecipients. And you can see that the 80% of the area mid-income is on that page, from a person of 1 making $48,200 to a family of 6 making $79,850. The next slide shows that we are considering food and meal programs. The funds can be used to address food insecurity brought on by COVID and the economic impacts of the health crisis. Eligible costs would include quantifiably expanding or new directional operation costs for items such as food pantries. We will also utilize subrecipients embedded in low moderate income areas and neighborhoods to provide these funds. And again, a portion of our admin dollars will be used to cover staff time and overseeing these subrecipients. An exciting, the next slide shows the exciting activity that Crystal had referred to. After talking to Crystal and Julianne, we determined that we could use some of these CDBG dollars to do sort of a smaller pilot of the WICO Connect program. This is an effort to embed about 20 community health workers in community organizations to help the most vulnerable populations navigate COVID-19 testing care and hopefully eventually vaccination. It would provide health education and connect families to other COVID-19 related resources such as housing, food, employment, etc. We would partner with the health department and subrecipients such as United Way and Community Health Council to manage this project. The project would involve employing Wyandotte County residents in community health care worker roles at a time when unemployment is high. And because of the breadth of the program, the funding would need to be significant. The hope is that this initial pilot can be leveraged to apply for additional funding. We plan to provide $1 million for direct operating costs and some additional funding for administrative costs for the first year of the program. And finally, a little bit of the admin and planning costs. We are allowed to have up to 20% of both allocations, which would be approximately $428,000, but we do not intend to reach those caps. These allocations will be used for a portion of CD staff time dedicated to the administration, but we will also use funds to help with WICO Connect that cannot be charged as operational costs, such as health department staff time. Allowable costs include developing systems for assuring compliance with program requirements, developing interagency agreements and agreements with subrecipients and contractors to carry out program activities, monitoring program activities for progress and compliance, and preparing reports and other documents related to the program for submission to HUD. So for expediency, next slide, please. We will prioritize subrecipients with knowledge of federal grant funding guidelines and the capacity to fulfill federal requirements. You know that CDBG is complicated and cumbersome to administer, and CD staff capacity must be considered as well. If our funding is used incorrectly and later HUD monitors and finds erroneous spending, the UG could be required to pay back these funds with non-federal dollars. So careful adherence to this federal requirement is crucial. And again, all of the activities that we fund out of these dollars must be used to prepare, prevent, or respond to the COVID-19 health crisis. The next slide shows you the proposed budget with the WICO Connect direct costs for $1 million, which these are estimated outputs. We're just estimating at this point 3,000 clients, rental assistance of $750,000 for 120 households, food meal programs $100,000 for 1,500 households, and then we would share our admin dollars with the health department and United Way and another agency to be determined in the amount of $200,000, and our regular CDBG staff time over a 6-year grant period about $93,980 for a total of $2,143,980. So we bring this to you tonight. We will be having to have a public hearing and revise our substantial amendment, which will need full commission approval. So for submission to HUD. So we plan to come before the full commission in November, have the public hearing, and get approval for submission. That is the end of my presentation. Sorry, I went through it so fast.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane? Oh, you still there, Commissioner?
Ladies, I want to thank you, your staff, for what you're doing. I know it is a huge task, a lot of responsibility, and I don't know how you do it. And like you said, in the time frame that you have to get it done, and the money has to be spent precisely on what you're working on. So I'd like to thank your entire team for what you're doing. I know it's difficult, and we appreciate your work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Kane. Commissioner Philbrook?
I would like to move that we move this forward to the full commission in November.
Second.
All right. I don't know. I don't think do we need a motion?
No, it's not an actionable item. It's just an update.
Well, then I still support it, and thank you for giving.
We all do.
The support is duly noted, and your appreciation to staff is duly noted as well. It has been quite the undertaking, and their work is definitely appreciated. Does anybody else have questions? All right, team, that was our last item for this evening. It was for information only, so we will see it as a public hearing on our full commission agenda. And that concludes our meeting for the evening. Thanks so much, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.